Welcome to Empowered by Iron, hosted by Dr. Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton from Grad Gains, the online resource for your fitness needs. Together, we are empowered by iron. Hey guys, welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week we're going to talk about something that's actually near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about body image. So I know a lot of women who are in the fitness industry who are trying to get healthy, who lift weights, who struggle with body image, and they may be a little bit more external about their body image. They may share about it, but there's a lot of women like me who keep it very quiet. They struggle with their body image. And they keep it to themselves. So today I kind of wanted to share my story, and Kristin can kind of share her story if she wants about body image and how we actually, through lifting, have become more empowered in ourselves and the way that we function and the way that we look. So when I was younger, I always wanted my one friend's legs. Like, there was this thing. She had skinny, long legs, and I always had legs that were bigger. I've never had a thigh gap. I've never had small legs. Like, I thought in high school you could reduce your muscle size. Someone told me that I could reduce my quad and hamstring size if I worked them out in high reps, which was totally ironic because then I was just building muscle.
Why would you even want to do that is my question, but okay, carry on.
Body dysmorphia.
Sure.
So I always wanted to be smaller than I was. And so it hit me the other day that I had been spending the last 8 years trying to diet. And for the longest time in high school, I sat at about 130 pounds. And I was pretty skinny. I was getting to the point where it was like, hey, Mary, what's going on? What's your problem? Because I was getting to the point that it was kind of terrifying. But that's when I was running 9 miles a day. I was eating 900 calories a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I was falling apart. And so I've had this thing in my brain ever since then that I need to be 130 pounds. And so when I started eating normally or semi-normally, like 3 meals a day, still very small meals, like 1,300 calories, I bumped up my weight and I started to see the scale at 145 and I freaked out. And so then for another couple of years in college, I was trying to diet, which, you'd think you just like get on the bandwagon and go. But there was something in my brain that I could not wrap around starving myself again. I couldn't wrap my brain around starving myself because I'd gone through an eating disorder where I starved myself. Anyway, flash forward to kind of now where I'm a lot more comfortable with myself, but I still struggle with these body image issues. And so you've known me for what, a year or so? Mm-hmm. In that year, I've tried again to cut down 2 or 3 different times.
Yeah, I'm in that definitely.
Yeah, and I'm sure Kristin noticed it, but I could not. There was a mental block, and I would start cutting, I would cut, and I'd get hungry, and that hunger was a cue for me, and I'd start binging, and then I'd put on weight, and then I wouldn't feel good anymore. And it was just this whole thing of not being able to accept the way that I look now. I don't look terrible. I mean, sure, I don't look like I do in high school, but who does? Who looks like they looked when they were, 20? I mean, I'm 24, but like, that's 4 years.
Your body changes. But, I distinctly remember you're like, okay, I'm cutting, blah, blah. And then you'd be like, this isn't really going well. And I think it was sparking you to have some binges, like,
yeah,
whether it be the fact that you were trying to be really strict when, like, that wasn't working for you, or, like, you were feeling hungry and that kind of made your brain freak out, and you would binge. Yeah. And so, that's that cycle, like, restriction and binging that I think a lot of people suffer from, and it's a really hard cycle to break.
It's hard. And the thing that I thought in for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people listening have this problem, is that I was following quote unquote flexible dieting. Mm-hmm. The more I cut though, the less flexible it became because I went back to this idea of clean eating, and I'd put foods off limits that would cause problems. And so I never hit this flexibleness about my diet.
It was still very rigid. You could eat what you wanted technically, but you made it more rigid than it needed to be, right?
I restricted myself.
Okay.
And it wasn't until recently that I just kind of said F it, and I kind of threw counting out the window. I threw everything out the window, and I just kind of ate to what I want and when I want, and have zero restrictions on myself. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of amazing, like when you take a step back and you actually start accepting yourself and accepting that, yeah, I don't look the way that I did before. Yeah, I don't have abs. I'm really strong. I really like being strong. You start accepting the fact that, okay, maybe you have a little bit of a love handle. Maybe your thighs do touch, and that's totally fine. Like, there's still some days that I put on pants and I'm like, these don't fit. Well, there's an easy problem for that. Go buy new pants that fit. You don't try to fit into your medium-sized pants that no longer fit, because you've gotten gains and you need to fit in a larger size.
Right. I actually see this with a lot of my nutrition clients when they first come to me, and we work through it and it winds up being fine, but they in their mind they have this idea of what they need to look like or what. And so one of my questions is always like, number one, does it really matter what you look like? You're coming to me for sports performance increases. I didn't hear you say anything about what you want to look like. Why is this suddenly a factor? And so we have to work through that. And like some people, you want to look good, and that's fine. Like if that's your goal, then that's great. Yeah. That's totally fine. And if you can do that in a healthy manner, then great. But for athletes, it's maybe like secondary.
And I think it's really hard. Like, I've always been a kind of athlete, but it wasn't until I got into weightlifting that I actually found something that I'm good at. It's really hard for someone who has had eating disorders and they have body dysmorphia or body image issues to be able to separate those two things. That to be like, I want to perform and I need to be okay with how I look. Like, if performance is my number one goal, I can't be upset that I don't look a certain way. Sure, that doesn't mean I have to be like huge or I have to be tiny. Like, I can be exactly where I'm at, or I can cut, or I can gain, whatever, but you need to be able to separate the two and be okay with maybe being a little fluffier if what you're trying to do is perform. Because what I've noticed is now that I'm eating like a normal person, I'm not restricting myself. I maintain at the same weight. It is not a problem for me to sit right at 68 kilos. I sit right there, and I get to eat what I want, and I don't have that stress, and my performance has gone through the roof. And it's just taken me so long, and I know that there's a lot of you out there who struggle with this. It takes a while for you to be able to separate the two. It takes a while for you to be like, yeah, okay, I do want to look a certain way, and eventually you will get there, but you need to focus on what's really important, and that's about getting your mind right and focusing on the things that that matter. Like, looks, sure, you want to look great, and that's totally fine, just like you said, but you need to think of what is valuable to you. Like, are looks the most valuable thing, or do you want to be able to perform? Do you want to be able to be smart? Like, all these other great qualities that you have that are totally different from the way that you look.
Right. They're separate from it.
They're totally separate. And I know that a lot of you listening probably have these issues or have dealt with these issues in the past. And something that I struggle with, and kind of why I forced Kristin to do this podcast, is that I want you to know that you're not alone. Like, there's a lot of women like me who quietly suffer. They say everything's okay. They act totally fine, but really they're just quietly like hating themselves for the way that they look. And you need to realize that, I mean, you are who you are, and you're a beautiful, unique butterfly, and that's just how it is. Now go to the gym and get freaking strong, and eventually that stuff will work itself out. Eventually you'll gain control. Not without effort, of course, but it's going to be okay. But you don't have to suffer alone either. You know, you can reach out to people.
Absolutely. You can, there's all sorts of communities you can reach out to. Lots of Facebook groups for people with body dysmorphia or just like positive body image groups, reach out to us. Yeah. I remember the day that you said, because I've helped you with your nutrition from time to time, and I remember the day that you said, so I'm thinking about just, like, what if I just, like, switch my focus to eat to support my performance and just maintain where I'm at. And I was like, oh, we're on to something now. Like,
she's figured it out.
Yeah, because it's really hard. I mean, I've done it. I went through it. It's really hard to try to increase your performance while you're trying to do things like cut a full weight class.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain point you can do it, and then as your body fat starts to get lower and lower, it becomes harder and harder, and there's this there becomes this question of like, why?
Yes.
So I had this brilliant idea. I'm a 69 kilo lifter, and I had this brilliant idea that I was going to lift at nationals as a 63, masters nationals as a 63, and I just thought, well, like, I'm an okay 69 lifter, but, like, I could be a little bit better at 63. Like, instead of, 6th place, maybe I could get 3rd place, or I don't know what it was about. Like, I really needed to just be focusing on getting stronger.
Right. But you wanted to be a little leaner.
Well, I wanted to be a little leaner, and I like to use myself as an experiment. So I was like, well, let's give this a try. And so I got there. And then the next morning over breakfast with my coach, he looked me in the eye and said, all right, are you done now being a 63? I don't want you to lift this weight class anymore. I was really lean. I actually did really well. I did really well. But when I came back from that, I was like, I just don't feel like I made that training cycle a little harder on myself than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And so out of respect for my coach, I really still wanted to lift as a 63. And out of respect for my coach, I was like, all right, I'll lift as a light 69 and it'll be okay. So I trained then for, so that was March. And then I trained for Masters Pan American Games, which was in June. And so that training cycle, I was eating to stay at around 60, I think we were trying to keep me around like 65, 66 kilos, so that I could use body weight advantage.
Right.
Which that also wound up working really nice for me. And that training cycle was so much easier.
Yeah.
And these are things that I know, but this is why it's good to have like people outside of you to tell you like, what are you doing? You don't need to be doing this. Like, you're fine. This doesn't matter. Just lift the things and eat the food.
Yeah, and just you gotta find people who are patient with you too, because like for me it just took time. It just took me realizing like, hey, why are you screwing yourself over every single day? Maybe you should stop.
Right.
I think it just takes time and patience. Kind of, but just like you just said, it just takes you trying and being like, oh, okay, that was fun, and try something else.
Right. Yeah, I definitely see this in my nutrition coaching. I really see this like athletes, they want to look a certain way and then perform a certain way. And sometimes I have to step in and say, we can try this, but you need to decide which is more important to you, because when push comes to shove, I'm going to push you in the direction of what's more important to you, and that might be uncomfortable for you to do, but and people are out, they're like, well, when it really comes down to it, yeah, I'd like to be able to squat 300 pounds as opposed to have 15% body fat. Maybe I'd be happy at 17% body fat and
God forbid.
And amazing things happen when people start doing that. And I think it's been coaching athletes on their nutrition for me, and watching like almost every one of my athletes, particularly women, start going through this cycle. And then you can see when the cycle breaks and when they're like, all right, I'm just going for all out performance. And then here's the crazy thing. usually their body composition becomes a little bit more favorable anyway,
Right,
and they're
it
just not
just
stressed out
follows.
about it. Yes.
It's the stress that's the problem.
Right.
Stressing to look a certain way or be a certain way, and then when you've let go of that, magically you kind of migrate that way because you're focused on the thing, the athletic performance that's going to give you that body.
Right. And it's that athletic performance that gives people confidence.
Yep.
That makes them feel empowered because they just did something that they didn't think they could do.
Right. Anyone can diet.
Anyone can diet.
No, not everyone can squat 300 pounds.
That's right.
So, on that note, guys, know that you're not alone. It's okay. Be patient with yourself. Surround yourself with people who are patient with you, and it's going to be okay.
And looks aren't the most important thing.
Least interesting thing about you, as someone that I look up to make squats says all the time. Should be the least interesting thing about you.
Mm-hmm. Have a good heart.
Be smart and strong. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.
If you like what you heard today, please help us connect with other female badasses. We would love if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Tell your friends about us. Visit our website, which is empoweredbyiron.com. You can find each of us on Instagram. Mary is at MaryMo_92, and Kristin is at Kristin with an I, Lander. Future topics will include nutrition, programming and training, mental health, and just general female badassery.
Yeah, so let us know what you want to hear. If you have any input, that'd be awesome. And guys, this is Empowered by Iron. We want it to be a resource and an outlet for women who are finding their confidence, their independence, and their strength through iron. So thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in. And until next time, I'm Mary.
I'm Kristin.
And this is Empowered by Iron.